Hello, Missy.
Hey, Aaron.
It's nice to see you today.
Such a good time to see you and spend some time together talking about all these fun things.
Absolutely. And so I guess I should explain what it is we're talking about and why we're talking and kind of what the process is. So I am talking with Missy Willis of Let 'em Go Barefoot, and Missy has a website, a Substack, and actually also has a podcast by the same name. I think your podcast
Mhm.
is Let 'em Go Barefoot, right,
Yep.
Missy? Yeah.
Yes, it is.
And then I also am part of a podcast. I co-host the Virtual Kitchen Table podcast with Haley and Ashley. So this conversation is neither of those things exactly. Just it's just Missy and I recording a conversation that could be, potentially helpful for some other people to listen to, hopefully. And I always find conversation kind of helps me process thoughts further. So selfishly, I'm kind of excited to do this as well. So I was inspired to kind of, I think about this stuff a lot, Missy, but I was inspired to talk about it further. You had written a Substack, and I believe the title is Make the High School Diploma Mean Something Again. Is that it?
Yes, that's
I
it.
got it? Okay.
That's it.
So that caught my eye, that caught my eye, and I read it, and I was so interested in the thoughts that you had and just the research in it. And I appreciate that about your work, Missy, that you write with really good, sources and research. So for me, I'm
Thank
often
you.
kind of anecdotal. So it's always nice for me to actually see numbers and studies and so, yeah, for me, I think that this whole topic is interesting from like a few different angles. I think obviously from a homeschool perspective, we're always thinking about this stuff, right? Because I think at the bottom of what we talk, as much as people are talking about things with kids of all ages, at the bottom of that is like, what is my kid's future going to be? We can talk about how much we enjoy of course, we love the present time with our kids and all that stuff. But lurking in the back, for a lot of people is, what skills and experience and knowledge are they going to develop, and what can they do with that, and what's the process? Can kids go to post-secondary? Can they hold down a job? All of those things. So I think from like a homeschool perspective, um, even though your essay was not specifically about homeschooling, I think it was more broadly an educational conversation, or sort of your thoughts were more broad. I think it's interesting to people from a homeschool perspective. And then also because I work with, I work with kids, but also adults. Some of those people are young adults. Some are older, wanting to make a change, who have disabilities. And so I'm always, for a number of years, I did quite a bit of what we call job development and job coaching. And so we were always working with these kinds of ideas. What are we putting on the resume? What is, how do you describe yourself? What is your education? What are those opportunities for like a variety of people? And then thirdly, in the work that I'm doing right now, I'm doing a lot of interviewing and recruiting. So I'm talking to multiple people in a week, with various educational backgrounds. And because I get to follow up with those families that we're recruiting, the various positions we're recruiting for, I kind of get to see how it plays out a little bit. So what's been interesting to me is, and I haven't found a way to articulate this within like the homeschool community yet, because I'm always kind of conscious of like how to do that ethically and confidentially, and but I will figure out a way at some point, because and maybe here I am talking about it, so here you go.
Yeah.
but but it's just that idea of like, I think people will say to me, oh, it's so nice to hear about how things are on the other end, because Missy, you and I both have older kids now. So I think people have some confidence, maybe thinking, oh, her kids are older. And yes, I do feel confidence from that. But what I also feel confidence from is seeing, sadly enough, at times, how people can have a huge amount of education and really not do well in the jobs, in the jobs that we interview for or orient for.
Mhm.
And I was part of a family, and I will give you the floor in a minute. I'll say one more thing. I was part of a family planning, like a vision planning meeting the other night, and and part of that team, we were really having trouble finding good facilitators for a certain situation. And somebody even said, seems to me like if I look at the people we've hired, it's like the more qualified they are, the worse the outcome seems to be. And
Interesting.
we're all kind of like, yeah, yeah. And it's
Yeah.
interesting because we find that sometimes if you orient somebody from just a place of openness and willingness to learn and life experience, um, not all the time, but sometimes, often, it can go quite better than people coming in saying, I have this, and this certification. And so, here's what I'll offer you, and I'm going to be great. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just interesting, even how that plays out psychologically for people, this idea of
Yeah.
having certain certifications or whatever. So anyway, I'll end there for now, Missy, but I would love to hear anything about you that you want to share, and then yeah, the kind of what led you to want to being inspired to write the article.
Right, right. Well, thank you first for having me, and also thank you for reading my Substack. It's not, um, it's something that I do as long form because obviously with social media and Instagram, you can make long captions and they're beautiful and they're wonderful. But for me, I've found that when I really need to talk, I just go to Substack and I like lay it all out because, like you said, I process through my writing, and if things are bouncing around in my mind, it's like I need to get this on paper. And then I also have an assumption about something. So let me go see what the research says and see if I'm actually on track or if I'm overemphasizing something or underemphasizing something. So that's where I always love to pull the numbers in and just see what the data says. And maybe there's just a little part of me that wanted to be an investigative journalist when I was younger. And so this is my little investigative journalist
Yeah,
self coming out on my Substack. So there's that. Um, and so when it comes to the diploma, well, first of all, just the bottom line for me is if we're going to require people to do something and we're going to mandate it and we're going to put parents in jail if their kids don't go, then they better leave with something tangible and some way to forward in a forward trajectory for their lives that means something to them. So for me, it's like a moral imperative, if anything. It's like,
absolutely.
do not force people to do A, B, or C, and then just leave them hanging at the end. And so I have just struggled with that idea for a long time as a person in school from K through 12, then of course as a teacher, and then as an educator in different wearing different hats in the public and private school, and even in homeschool. And then the other piece of it is I'm back to tutoring again, which I know you and I've talked about. And so I'm starting to see inside underneath the hood again of the educational system. And while I was in it for a long time, and then I kind of stepped out to really be more present with my kids and to homeschool, to be able to kind of circle back to that world has just kind of reinvigorated my belief that if we're going to make kids do this, then they have to have something to lead with. And so that's where this idea of like, well, why don't we just go back to the basics? Like, we're going to make them be in high school, then let's make that diploma mean something. And years ago, I wrote something about the fact that it just was getting watered down. And the diploma is sort of like this carrot that's dangling over the kids. Like, if you just do the thing, we'll give you this diploma. And what we know is that a diploma does not equate to a particular set of skills. If anything, it's like just a piece of paper that shows you check the box of what the state requires. And then now, if you're going to go to college, you really need to look at the transcript. So the diploma is just sort of extra. And then the transcript really is about what the students did and then what the grades were. And of course, as we all know, there's a hierarchy within the school system. Not every class is created equally. You've got the standard, then you've got the advanced, and you've got the AP. And so even within our system, we have a hierarchy, but I think people don't like to think about that. We want to think, oh, everybody goes to school and everybody gets their degree and everybody's good. But I'm like, no, we have variety of skill sets, we have a variety of cognitive abilities, and I think that's okay to admit. Because if we're not admitting it, I think we're just actually not helping the kids that we say we want to help. So if anything, it just bites them in the butt later on. If we're not helping them right now to get clear on their goals and their objectives, or helping them if we're the adults who are meant to be in those spaces to help children build their skills, if we're not looking at that and saying, okay, where are the skill deficits? What kind of supports do they need? Where can we buttress them up a little bit more, either academically or critical thinking or reasoning or even job skills, then I just think we're doing a disservice to our students and to the kids, and then ultimately to our society, because it all rolls downhill. And then the other part of that whole idea with the diploma meaning something is the college push for all. And I have seen how that has broken down over the last 30 years or so, in terms of, and in my essay, I wrote about the fact that I'm one of 3 children, and I'm the youngest of 4 technically, but 3 surviving. And my oldest brother ended up going to, he went to high school. And at the time, because he's 6 years older than me, they actually offered half-day programs by the time you got to be a senior, so you could go to work. So he had a job from he worked all the time. He was working at 15, 16, 17, and then he had a very good construction job. So he left school half day by 12 o'clock and went to work. And he was approached by teachers who said, maybe you should go to college. And he didn't want to. He said, no, I'm good. I don't want to do that. So he full-time construction. And then in the grand scheme of things, bird's eye view, has done incredibly well for himself. Owns a beach house, lives beautiful home, makes plenty of money, didn't go to college. Has he worked hard? Absolutely. And then you have my middle brother, who dropped out of school at age 16 while in middle school. He was 3 years older than me, and I was literally catching up to him in school because they kept holding him back. And when he became 16, he drove himself to school and walked to that front desk and wrote himself out and said, see you later. I'll never be back. And that broke my heart. I'm 3 years younger than him, like I said, and I watched him do that. And I remember thinking, what is his life going to be like? Because back then it was, you didn't have an education. What were you going to do? So his skill set was very hands-on, very physical. He loved to build things and work, and he could take a car apart and build it again. And so he did end up doing that kind of stuff. But he struggled constantly with various things. And then there was me, who came along and was like, I just loved learning. I was reading encyclopedias and couldn't read enough books. And my brother nicknamed me Book. And, because I was reading all the time. So all that to say, three kids, same family, same parents, pretty much the same location that we grew up in, and 3 completely different outcomes. And what bothers me the most about that is the fact that society rank ordered us. I was considered on the higher end because I chose college, right? And then the next order would be the older brother because he has a full-time stable job. And then the bottom would be my brother because he dropped out. So that disturbs me when we label kids like that, and then sort of predetermine their future based on whether or not they went to college. So it's that self-fulfilling prophecy. We learned about that in my master's program in education, because it was like, kind of be conscious of what you're saying to your kids, because your outside voice becomes their inner voice. And for years he heard that he was a problem, and he was incapable. And then he'd get put in special education classes with children who were literally in wheelchairs and not verbal. And here he is, so that was back in the 80s, way before we had all the various support systems. So that's a long-winded way of saying that this idea of education being something that we say we want to help kids create a better life for, I just don't see that those two things are matching up in a way that they need to. And we're putting so much money into education, and yet we still have so many kids failing and falling through the holes. So that was the impetus.
Yeah. So there's so many pieces there, Missy. So I'm so interested to talk about the assumptions about college and whatnot. But before I do that, I just want your initial pieces about the actual diploma itself. And it's so interesting because like we're in two different, so you're in the US, you're in South Carolina.
North Carolina.
You're in North Carolina. And I'm in Canada, in Ontario. And so, different school systems, I mean, even within, and I think you're the same, even province to province here, our school systems are provincial. So it's different, if you go to a different province. But isn't it interesting? Like you have, I find now kind of speaking to people more globally, all these different places, but a lot of, because many of our school systems were originally kind of based on very similar model. We won't go into all of that, but you really do see all these similarities. And the piece about the high school diploma, and you're right, like there's this piece of paper or whatever, this level of achievement, and yet that is so vastly different. It's not the same. When you get into the different levels that are offered in courses, or just even the different types of courses, right? Some kids really go into the arts or the sciences or whatever. This is a vastly different piece of, there's nowhere else that you have vast levels and vast areas of study and kind of call it all the same thing, right, or saying what's your level of education. But what I've seen happen here, and I think by some of the things you've said, it's probably similar in other places. There is such a pull. I almost have an image of kids being pulled to get this piece of paper. And what I see is an almost bending over backwards. I mean, the fact of the matter is, now the way our education is structured, teachers don't want the same kids in the same classes over and over again. So if you have a kid who's just not able to pass English or not able to pass math, they're offering all sorts of, things that sometimes aren't even all that related to the subject. They'll kind of let them do it a couple times in maybe a summer school, but at some point they're finding alternative ways to help them get that piece of paper. And on one hand, that's very kind. Like I have seen an attempt. Like, I think the things that you're talking about and that you've written about, they are recognized within the school system, but the system is so, it's just such a big machine that it's like, I think that the teachers and the administrators, it's like, what do you do with that? Because they are still expected to churn these kids through to get this piece of paper. Right. So, I mean, I know parents who are, oh my goodness, driving kids to alternative centers to try to get this part of a credit so they can, like, it's just literally that image of pulling just keeps coming up. These are not kids who feel meaning in getting that piece of paper, and often rightly so, right? Like some kids they're not going to play the game. So I find often it doesn't even, for some kids, it might be they don't learn the way that the school system operates, whether we call those learning disabilities or whatever. But for other kids, it can be a mental health piece. It can just be, they can have just a really self-determined personality where it's like, on some level, there's some sort of, maybe they're conscious of it, maybe they aren't, but there's some sort of resistance. That's just like, they're getting to grade 12 and it's like, I mean, here in Ontario, we have full-time junior kindergarten now. Like these kids have been in for 14 years. Oh, wow. That started about 15 years ago or so. And so these kids have just been pulled through, and I think they get to, 17 or 18 and it's like, no, you're not going to keep churning stuff that's not. And I also think kids aren't very, and I'm generalizing, but aren't necessarily very well educated, ironically, about what it is they need or don't need. They're just told, you need to have this so that you can go to this level. And this level will get you the good life that you need. And if you can't achieve this, you won't have a good life. Right. So to your point about the self-fulfilling prophecy, so one of my kids decided to go to public high school for a couple of years. And that was, it was so interesting to him to talk to. I remember him saying, Mom, my friends, they don't even know. He said, they don't know that they don't actually need to take another science. They think they do. Their parents have told, I'm sure their parents were cursing my son, because my son is saying, are you planning to take science in university? You don't need a grade 12 history. Are you taking history? Right. So there was all this push that they were kind of being told either by the guidance counselor or their parents that this is what and there might have been some meaning to that my son didn't understand as far as what they were applying to. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But it was just interesting to see the difference in him coming from, a homeschooling, very open-ended unschooling type environment of being able to self-direct a lot of his work, and hearing these kids kind of, I have to, and he'd be like, you don't have to, right? Mm-hmm. So that was really remarkable to him, that these kids were 17, they weren't even really kids anymore. And they didn't actually know that they already had what they needed for their diploma without taking the extra credit or whatever.
And like you said, too, speaking to the temperaments of children, we know everybody's not the same. We know there are some kids who will go into school and be like, just tell me what to do. I'll do it, and I'll do it great, and I'll be fine and satisfied and happy, and I'll go on my merry way. And then you've got the other extreme where kids are like so resistant to being told what to do and just shut down when they feel like they don't have any autonomy. And so again, it just goes back to personalization. That's why homeschooling can be so amazing. That's why smaller groups can be so amazing. One-on-one tutoring, because you're personalizing to the individual, not from the curriculum. Mm-hmm. And what better way to build complacency in a population than to tell them what they have to learn and think and do and be. And then, at some point you get to that place of like, I don't want to see another book. I don't want to walk into another school. And how does that encourage being educated? How does that encourage lifelong learning when you essentially shut a student's interest down in bettering their own life? Because we think about education as bettering yourself, or knowledge building as being, leveling up as a human. And I do feel like overall we push so much about the cognitive and stop and have not thought about the spiritual or the physical, or what does a good life mean to you? Let's actually take that statement and break it down. Like, what does that mean? Does that mean you're living near the beach? Does that mean you're in the mountains? Does that mean you have goats? What does that mean? And, does it mean you want to have a family? And if so, how many kids do you think you'd have? Like what? So it's like we put them in a track and say, do all of these things first, then you can think about the next part. Then you can think about the next part. It's like you have to check the boxes before you can think about your future. And I have always just fought against that. And I'm like, why are we making kids wait to live their lives? They're living them now. If you've got a child who's a reader, let them read whatever. Give them books. If they're an artist, give them the things. Offer the resources. Offer to pay for a class for for art if they want to. Get the app. It's just wild to me that we've created this idea that you have to get all the knowledge in your brain first, and or pass these tests, and or make the grades, and then now you're worthy of actually going into whatever you're interested in. Now, of course, you've got children who will do a full load of academics and then do a full load of whatever their passions are or their interests. But those are rare. They're rare kids. And that's not a typical way, I think. That's not a healthy or energetically positive way to spend your time, by thinking of life as, I must do all this stuff that everybody else tells me to do, which I have zero interest in, and then I can actually live my life. If anything, we're delaying maturity. We're prolonging the dependency. And I'm not saying we need to force our kids into adulthood. It's not that. There's a difference between being mature and being an adult, or not. There's a lot. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not like you become 18 and all of a sudden you have all this knowledge and you're now an adult, even though we say that. It's like, you're 18, bye, get out of here. I'm like, well, but do they have the skills that they need to live a self-sufficient life? Have you given them a chance to do that? Or are you still expecting them to raise their hand to go to the bathroom at 18 and then they graduate and now all of a sudden they have to have it all figured out? Like, it's just confusing. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it 100% isn't it. It makes me think about having this this freedom to have this more individualized, like not just not just homeschooling experience or education, but this more individualized like mindset in general. Because you're right, then you don't have the situation where kids turn 18 or 20 or whatever the magic age is, and there's this assumption that, okay, you're an adult now, you're going to know, off you go kind of thing. And so there's that ability to kind of scaffold and encourage and support, back off, support again, back, you see what the individual need is. At the same time, for kids who are, or it could be the same kid, but just different areas, they might have really kind of mature, well-developed levels of thinking about other things at 15, 16, 17. So there's not this idea of like, kind of what you're saying, okay, you're growing up and here's your point where you go from, teenager to adult, but we're just, allowing them to dive deep into things at a younger age, but not necessarily expecting that they will at 21, 22. These arbitrary ages, right? That just don't line up with how people actually develop.
Right. Yes. Well, and I will say, as far as like, and I've spoken about this before and written about this, if we, as even homeschooling parents, but even as an educator, when we create these systems of skills and ideas and concepts that we think kids need to know, we are actually completely usurping their lives. And by that I mean, if I was the one that was supposed to create all the things that my kids needed to learn in order to quote unquote be successful, they never would have gotten to the level that they're at right now in whatever those skills are that they want to learn. So my daughter as an artist would never the level she's at if I took control of her art when she was 5, 6, 7 years old and said, oh no, we got to do this art and this art and this art and this art. But instead she had the freedom to just go. It's just like running through a field, she just got to test and try and play and decide. And none of that had anything to do with me. So the only thing I can do about patting myself on the back for her skill is I gave her the time to do it, space to do it. I don't get to take any claim whatsoever in her ability because that's all her. Same with my son, and same with all these other kids I've worked with over the years. When you give them that space, and like you were saying, the scaffolding, I feel like what our jobs are as mentors and adults is not to try to pour all this knowledge into our children. They're not like buckets to fill. They're people to develop, and they have to bump up against challenges. They have to skin their knees sometimes. We can't, it's not like a little, like, they're not bumper cars. Like we don't put all the special soft things around them and make them, have this insanely like magical path that they take. They have to learn by trial and error and sometimes through fire. And now, do we just take our toddlers and let them wander into traffic? Of course not. We give them guardrails and we give support. But I guess the big picture of education is that when we allow ourselves as parents to be comfortable with not knowing exactly what the next skill set needs to be, then there's an opportunity for all of us to be more curious. Right. And I know that I've learned so much more as a homeschooling parent. Like there's so many things that my kids have learned and done and we've engaged with that I'm like, oh my gosh, I missed this growing up. Like, I don't remember doing this part So I think if we can always maintain that mentality, but life is learning and we are all lifelong learners and we never arrive to a spot and go, okay, we're done. Because, you and I have talked about this in midlife where kids are older. They don't need us like they needed us before. And so you and I are doing our thing. Like we're still, like we're having these conversations right now because our brains want to do stuff. We like to engage in conversation and learn and test things. And I just feel like humans are that way. Children are obviously very unique because they are dependent and they need us for that reason. But when it comes to developing a skill set, I think it's, we have to get more comfortable with realizing we don't know what their future is going to be. We don't know who they're going to turn out to be. And while that can be very scary, people like to feel certain. We know that's not true. Like it's just not a thing. if anything, what I feel that is more indicative of helping our kids live the lives that they want to live and feel successful. It's the solid foundations that you build in their childhood. It's helping them find a space to plug into and belong and feel like they're contributing to society in a positive way. Those are the things that matter. Competency, autonomy. It's the self-determination theory. It's if you can do these things and you feel like you're contributing to a group of friends, a friend group, a community, your job, that's the kind of stuff that make people feel joyful and feel like they belong, and that creates that internal story, and also the more positive mindset. And a lot of times that has nothing to do with where you went to school. It has nothing to do with whether or not you got a college degree.
Right. No, absolutely. It's funny. I knew we were having this conversation. Obviously, yesterday I was part of I guess it was part one. I thought it was going to be this full interview, but I'm part of this anthropological study out of a university here in our province. And there, I guess I just got kind of the information session yesterday, so I'm not 100% sure. I don't have the questions yet. But it's based around, I guess, the effectiveness of like individual facilitation for families who have a member who has a disability. So that's kind of the long story. But one of the little questions, because they're just kind of going down, name, number of years you've been doing this, all the little details. And they said to me, what was the question? Highest level of education, I think. I can't remember. I think it was just that simple, right? And so we kept going down, and then I actually asked them to back up again. I said, could we go back to the education one for a minute? So these were two graduate students and a supervisor who were on this virtual call with me. And I said, could we just back up to the education question for a minute? I said, because I've put university, but I really have a couple of other things I'd like to add that are probably more relevant to the work I'm doing. So I said, Missy, I think our college and university system is a little bit different here. So our college, I think with your college, like kids can often do that even in high school, can't they? Whereas here, our college system is a little bit more aligned with our university system, but it's like a practical version. But for example, when I applied to university, so I went to college first, but I was able to transfer a lot of my counseling courses directly. So I'm not sure if your system works that way, but anyway, we won't get into all the particulars, but the long and the short of it was, I just wanted to say to them, those practical years that I did were at least as valuable. So I like that included. And then I also went to a private, I did like a Gestalt therapy therapist certification. And so that's not one of our public universities. But boy, oh boy, it was better. And I mean, that's a whole conversation as well, right? About government education versus private education. And then of course, self-directed education, which is a whole other thing and can be just as rich, right? But I just wanted to say that. And they were like, they were fine about it. But I'm like, I thought maybe I planted a little seed there too, but I just felt that was important because if we're talking about this role of facilitating with families, I don't want to feed into this idea that's only for people who have taken in information and written an essay about it. Because for me, university courses for me were much easier than college university. My college courses, we were having to develop programs and presenting it in front of, a seminar. And I was on videotape with my counseling skills. I remember a group partner and I, we went into, and gosh, I was only 18. We went into our largest federal penitentiary.
Wow.
Walked around for the day and interviewed these psychologists who has a big role in, and these were the most major offenders in our country, who make decisions about even whether people can be up for parole, which most of these guys really can't be, so it was just, I never got any of that in university. I read some great books. I read some great books, and I have no problem writing essays, but the stress for me, though, and good stress, right? But I can remember sitting by a river during my more like kind of practical college years and thinking, oh, I've got to present this program tomorrow, in front of 50 people. Like that for me was trickier. So
yeah,
I wanted to illustrate that to these students, and of course they're steeped in academia. What they're doing is very academic. Not to say they haven't done other things. Anyway, they were totally open to that. We didn't have a big conversation about it or anything, but yeah, just something in my brain. I'm like, hold up.
Yeah, right. It's important. Yeah. If you went out of your way to do something in addition to, then it makes sense to document that and make note of it, because it's powerful. It's the timing of all this is kind of funny, because I just sat with my daughter who's doing the dual enrollment program, which dual enrollment for us means you can be a high school student but take community college courses. And the community colleges in our area have what they call, there's an agreement with all of these state universities to take all those credits. So they're not taking a bunch of classes that won't transfer. So any of the courses that she takes for her associate's degree will automatically go into the college in the area that she chooses. So the thing is, so she could graduate technically with an associate's degree, which would be 60 credit hours in college. But when you look at all those classes, and here she's somebody who loves graphic design. That has to be an additional. The graphic design program is separate. So it's kind of like what you were saying with the counseling. Counseling part is separate. It's looked at as a totally different world, whereas the education/college prep are all general ed stuff. Now, yes, could you go a little deeper into like philosophy or the natural sciences or even religion? Sure, you could, but it's not the same. It's like maybe 2 to 3 classes versus when you do like a program like graphic arts or like you did with counseling, you've got, seminars and workshops and physical work that you have to do in order to prove that you're capable of doing whatever those skills are. So all that to say, this is the part that does annoy me with what the colleges are expecting. It's kind of like, again, just do all of these general things, and then we'll give you a piece of paper to say you did all these general things. And by the time you get to be a junior in college, then you can actually go deeper into whatever it is you want to study, right? For 2 years, you have to do basic, including, well, at least for me, back in the earlier or mid 90s, early 90s, taking a foreign language, which I took German, and I have no idea how to speak German. For 2 years, I spent my life practicing, writing, learning German, and never applied it. And therefore there's nothing left in my brain. And again, we can't remember everything we come into contact with. It's impossible. So there was a quote I shared a while back. It was in Alfie Kohn's book, one of his books. And it was basically like, he was interviewing a professor or a teacher who said, I became aware of how I was basically like the guy at the corner of the intersection handing out flyers to children to basically say, here, go throw this in the trash for me when it comes to information, because you're just putting so much out there that the kids are essentially taking some stuff and it's resonating for whatever reason. Again, not something you can predict. You don't know what's going to hit with each kid. So some people will argue that's why you teach it all, because you never know what's going to land. Okay, fair enough. But overall, you're spending so much time and effort teaching a ton of data and a ton of information that just really isn't going to stick. So why not focus more on the interests that they have and the classes and the coursework that will literally turn into a career or turn into a job? All those other classes are going to be available. So if somebody decides, you know what, I really want to go do world history and early civilizations, we'll have at it, But is that class really going to make you a better marketer? It could be, but Is it really going to make you a better um, uh, banker? I don't, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just, so it's just this, the system is set up in my mind for the most part to make money, to make money off of fear, worry, the idea that you have to do this in order to be seen as even capable of taking on a job and being a serious employee. So we know it's a signal. It's a signal, and it has been for many, many years. But I do think it's shifting. I think we're noticing a shift, and we're being forced to, because what used to be a high school diploma could get you an entry level job got kicked out for the bachelor's degree. So those people who graduated with a high school diploma now didn't have the option to go into the entry level positions, right? Because they're like, no, we need people with bachelor's degrees. So then they lost out. Bachelor's degrees, you start, and now guess what happens? We got AI. So people with the bachelor's degrees are being kicked off for AI. So what are we doing?
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I love this because it kind of segues into, this now, what is the college diploma worth, or what is the university degree, or what are the certifications of any kind worth? And, I think something is worth as much as it's worth to you personally, but that's different than getting on the train because you've been told there's no other way. Yep. Right. So, they're two different things. And what I've noticed here is, well, a couple things. Getting into university here is not what it used to be, because, as you said, they want people, they want money, they want bodies in lecture halls, and so what we have, in my mind, is a huge oversaturation of people with university degrees who aren't. And you know what? It's always a little bit hard for me to know. Like, we have perceptions of things as a kid, and maybe it was always this way. I don't know. Maybe I'm looking at it through my eyes of when I was a child. But there was a perception, certainly coming through school, that and I grew up in a rural town, so there were, some people with university degrees, but it was the idea that if you had a university degree, you were smart in a certain kind of way, right? Like, you were, you were articulate, and you had good writing skills, and you knew all kinds of stuff. And it was very much, and so I think what's happened, again, a lot of this is anecdotal for me, but I feel like I could kind of do some of my own research on the various people I interact with. Like, there's a lot of people who, again, I've interviewed for these positions, and I look back at their resume and I'm like, really? Really? The grammar on there. Well, lately there's been a real influx of AI with cover letters, and that's a whole other thing. I'm reading people's cover letters, and I go to interview them, and I'm like, oh, you didn't write that cover letter. Okay.
Did not write that.
Okay. Nope. And there's parts of AI, there's parts of that I like. I like that it can help. It can make some things accessible. Like, somebody might be really good at a job, but not writing cover letters. So that feels okay to me. But there's another piece of sometimes where I'm like, and when people haven't used AI or haven't used it well, you're having conversations with people, and I'm just like, wow. Like, this is a person, they might have 2 or 3 degrees, people applying with master's degrees. And I'm just like, really? I know this. Well, so it's a different, and I mean that on a lot of levels, like, not just the academic standpoint, Missy, but and this has probably also been the case, they don't have a lot of integrity, or they don't present themselves with the people skills to be able to, it really, it's interesting, even as kind of self-directed as I am, how I will look at, they have a master's degree. Like, I still have that in my head a little bit. But it's
still a signal of some sort. It's like, it's indicative of the fact that they wanted to do it. And so therefore there's a motivation or a drive there that might not be the case in another candidate.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What I'm finding is that motivation, though, to get that master's doesn't always translate in a motivation to work.
Yes. So there's being good in the classroom, and then there's being good in the boardroom or in the office. That's a totally different world. Well, and so this, you brought up the thing about the master's degree. One big thing that has changed since I graduated. So I went to school in 1990. I graduated in 94, and then I went back to get my master's in 99. So I had a 5-year gap where I worked, and then I was like, you know what, I'm going to go back. And then, so that was like a 2 more year program to do my master's. Well, now what the way they do it is if you're in school in good standing, depending on whatever, whatever school you're in, whether it's education or humanities or whatever, they offer just stay 1 more year and get your master's. So now it's like, just go to college for 5 years, graduate with a master's degree, which I just find to be a bit weird, because that to me says you've already got them there. So just keep them 1 more year. But does that really give them another full, how much more does that truly add to their knowledge and their skill set? I don't know. I don't have that data, and I can't say for sure, but it is interesting. And to me, I don't know, maybe I'm cynical, but I just see it as a money grab. And I'm just like, what are we doing? And why are we watering down the diplomas? That's the problem. Because if we make it easy for everybody to get in, or if we make it easy for everybody to quote unquote succeed, again, we're flooding the market with tons of people who have bachelor's degrees and no jobs. I mean, I can't tell you how many kids I have heard graduate in debt and they're working at Target, graduate in debt and they're working at Starbucks. It's just mind blowing.
Yeah.
Mind blowing.
And not a lot of opportunity for experience in those years. Nope. So if you're going to school 4, 5, 6 years, you're in your early to mid 20s, and there you are. But depending on what you've been able to do over the summer, or whether there have been internships, but the other thing that makes me think about, Missy, is the randomness then of what we've decided. So it reminds me of, if we look at here in Ontario, what is required to become a teacher in our public education system. So when I was a kid, you only had to go to teachers college. So we had, now not the younger teachers, but we had several middle-aged teachers that I would have had. Actually, some of my best teachers, interestingly, who didn't go to university. They went to teachers college for, I think it's like 7 or 8 months, and they became a teacher. And then over that time, probably by the time I was into school, they were requiring, I can't remember whether it was a 3-year or a 4-year degree, and then teachers college.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the standard for a long time. And then a few years ago, they really upped the education level for teachers even further. And I can't remember, it's not so much a master's thing as it is the actual teachers college. And I might be speaking out of turn here, but anyway, they made it like two years at least, I think. Yeah. But then what happened? We have a shortage of teachers right now.
Yeah, it's huge here in the U.S. too.
Too many 20 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And so, okay, well, let's. It'll be a little longer until they get out. Now we don't. And so I heard somebody say the other day, I think they're going to shift those requirements to kind of feed more teachers into the system earlier. Well, so this all feels really random to me. Because some of the best teachers that I had did not even go to university. It was just in them. It was in the kids and be able to do these things, right? And so kind of like, so the teacher that goes this many years, oh no, actually you don't need to go this many years. So what are we saying? And again, we're working with social trends. We're working with population. We're working with money.
Yep.
And some of those things, the population, that kind of thing is fair. You can't always, some demographics and whatever, but it does show you within a system how random that is.
Well, and just again, how the social belief of something can shift and change over time. So, I mean, like the GI Bill being introduced to encourage everybody coming back from the war to go to college, and the fact that it just opened up opportunities for a ton of people, which is great. But at the same time, it didn't open up opportunities for everybody. But then as soon as the government got involved, the cost went up, because the colleges knew, okay, well, we're guaranteed to get X number of dollars per student if we do this. So then what happens? We start opening it up, more seats, more administration, more colleges open up. So then you got this huge influx for 20, 30 years. And then all of a sudden our demographics change. We don't have as many students. And then things start shifting and we've got colleges going bankrupt. And, I mean, I've heard stories. People are in their schools, in little private colleges or even a bigger college, and they don't have any more money. Bye. They shut the doors and send everybody home. And they're in the middle of trying to get a degree, So it's like,
oh, wow. Yeah.
What in the world is happening? And maybe that was always the case. I don't know. I don't think so, because it seems like it's definitely, I mean, the data has said that it's, we definitely increased. But, back to this whole idea of the lowering of academic standards, I wonder if we're going to see a slow evolution of schools becoming more difficult to get into and starting to kind of go back to the way they started out, which is we really want the top of the top, and we want the scholarly kids, the academic kids. Even if you can't afford it, we'll help you afford it, but they'll be giving less money out to less people. And then just kind of tightening the belt a bit, because I can't see how it won't happen, especially if we're looking at this AI revolution like we're looking at, and how AI is going to take over so many automated jobs. And whether we want it to or not, nobody asked my permission, but it's happening, right? So it is a train that is moving full steam ahead. So it will be, and it's like we said years ago, like, we are preparing our children for a future we do not know.
Yeah.
We don't know. So what better way to prepare our students and our children than to ensure that they're solid in who they are? They've created a very healthy support network, and they are living where they want to live, and they're doing work that makes them feel like they're contributing, and, like we talked about too, ironically, with the entry-level jobs now going to AI, we are also seeing a push towards trades and a push towards quote unquote blue collar jobs, because we need people. I mean, there are guys that are going into welding and, air conditioning and all the physical things that need to happen for our society to hum along, who are making, 6 figures.
Well, this is it. And so I love this, because I want to talk about this too. Like, so yeah, what does the high school diploma mean? And I think what do some of these degrees mean? And what is the real purpose of some of the post-secondary education institutions and all those pieces? And so, like, how else can we think about life? And what are those other options? And I feel like when we move out of that track of, oh, you've got to do this so you can do this so you can do this, it is like it's like you just breathe in a way, I think when I started, and for many of us, you step out bit by bit, right? Like I always kind of had a personality that I did things in a funny order. Like I never really did things on some subconscious level. I think I resisted that already. So
me too.
Not brand new for me.
Me either.
It's not brand new for me, but I still think, like, incrementally, I think what did start to become brand new was that still, even though I made the choice to homeschool, I think for a long time, I was really kind of thinking about you read lots of things, you hear lots of things, basically like, oh yeah, you can homeschool and your kid can still go to college and this is what you do. Like there still wasn't for a lot of years much discussion. It was really propping people up that yes, you could homeschool and then still step into the traditional conventional trajectory. Right. And so the shift for me was being like, but maybe the traditional trajectory isn't actually what all of my kids want to do or even makes sense for them or whatever. So that opening of my mind has been huge, because I've started to value, there are things I've always valued, but I've been able to like value them out loud, so to speak, even if it's just, to myself or talking to my kids. It's just so freeing to move out of that, because I talk to other people whose kids are my kids' ages, or maybe they were on sports teams and they're on this hamster wheel. Even the parent is on a hamster wheel. And it's, some of the conversations I've been hearing recently or been in I was talking to one mom the other day, and she was just really lamenting the huge amount, like the thousands and thousands of dollars that they're pouring into their daughter's education. But, she's gonna get her PhD. And I'm like, but in what? Like, I'm not really understanding in what. Like, I'm not feeling when I'm to her. I don't feel the passion for what her daughter's doing or whatever, and it creates there's a resistance or some sort of like there's some kind of energy in those parent-child relationships that is super different from what I'm experiencing in my relationships with my kids, because I'm not coming at it like I know more than they know. I have some experience in certain areas, but often I'm finding they'll kind of, they'll then generate an idea, and I'm like, oh, I didn't even know about that. Or I didn't even, one of my sons was updating his resume. He was applying for a promotional type position within the company that he's in. And, my homeschool mom brain is still like, should you put this in? Should you?
Yeah.
And he's, Mom, I know that it's kind of like, no, I know the managers I'm interviewing, like, back off. I've got, and so we have this idea that we're still preparing and we've got to do it all right. And it really, world, like even within relatively traditional, like he's in a relatively traditional business structure, but even within that, it's still a different world. Like the processes are different. So for myself, I'm just finding kind of opening up my mind to, there's all kinds of different ways of doing things. And it's even nice just in talking to other parents. Sometimes I can just offer, like, they're not asking me to offer anything, but I'll hear people kind of making excuses for their kids, right? I'll say, oh, how's so-and-so? Oh, she's good. She ended, she went into hairdressing. And I mean, because she's so creative. And I'm like, no, that's great.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I know. Yeah. Like there has to be a caveat to the idea that they didn't take the college path. Like you're somehow saying in admitting it, you're somehow admitting that they chose the lesser path. And that annoys me, because if we do value diversity, like we say we do, then we need to have a diversity of options as well. And not everybody is cracked up to be the exact same. How boring of a world would we live in if that was true? And so that's why it's just a social reality that we have put a brand on the degree as the better choice / more, what is the word I'm looking for? Just the, like a hierarchy, if you will. It's a value in society differently than not doing that. And yet it just makes me laugh, because when you look at the people directly and you look at person A over here with the 4-year degree plus the master's degree, not able to get a job in the world that they want to get into. And it's not their fault. That's the thing. Like, it's not to say that there's a deficiency in the individual. Unfortunately, they've just been pushed into a path that our society is not supporting anymore, even though we're giving it lip service, but we're not giving it physical service. So that, to me, I feel like some of these kids that can't get a job in the area that they want to get in needs to go back to college and get a refund, because that's a lot of money they spent being told that they have to do this in order to go wherever. And then why are colleges not providing kids with another bridge to career? Just like I was saying with the high school diploma, you get a high school diploma. What's the next bridge? What bridge are you going to take to go to the next step in your life? Same with college. Instead, it's get the degree, get out, and then go have fun and good luck, but we've got all your $80,000 now, hope you can get a job paying that debt back. And
it's no, absolutely. It's refund on money. And how do you refund that time? How do you refund time? And that, to me, to a degree, it's even mindset, like just so many years thinking of yourself as like a product of, how do I keep it up so I can be a product of this system, essentially, rather than really diving into what you want to do. I am enjoying being that person who, whether it's noticed or not, I don't know, but who can just be like, oh, that's awesome. Find out more, like, oh, wait, where, like, I don't want to do that whole back and forth with people, like, oh, I just want to validate that, because And, validating people whose kids are not sure what they want to do. And they're sort of, I'm like, well, yeah, it's a crazy world out there. And we don't all have to have that figured out at 18,
Right.
18, or maybe, some people say, oh yeah, they started at this college and you can tell they've changed course or they've come home for a little while or whatever. And it's kind of like, they're trying to be honest with you, I try not to ask these direct questions to people because I know how it feels as someone with, right? But sometimes it comes up, right? But it's like, well, yeah, good for them for not continuing on with how many years of, or even one more year. The other thing I wanted to, well, I've got a bunch of things still to say, Missy. So
it is a huge topic. It really is. It could go so many different directions.
Well, but it's interesting too, if we think about like, what is our, I guess I just also want to talk about, even if you use the degree or the diploma that you're getting or whatever you're doing, still the way things are presented. So I'm thinking of my oldest son and listen, he is somebody who he wanted that experience of moving to a different city, living in residence, doing all of that. So it's not that I'm not, this doesn't actually feel wasteful at all to me. It felt like a decision that was good for him and made sense. So when I say this, I'm not saying it from a place of assuming that these traditional routes don't work for anybody, because I think they do.
They do. Yeah, for sure.
Be assumed, right? But when I really looked at first of all, we talk about years. Well, it's here at least. It's really, it's advertised as September to April. When you really look at it, they actually were kind of done middle of April. They've got reading weeks in there. They've got spring breaks. They've got Christmas holidays. When you actually look at the number of weeks of sort of instruction or information, I guess because I'm thinking from a self-directed perspective, like how easy would it be to access that same amount of information with, these pockets of weeks they put in. One of the courses he was really looking forward to was a marketing. So he went into a business program, and that marketing professor was absent for probably 50% of the time. Right?
Wow.
And so we would talk about this, and I'm like, do I want to be that person who complains? Because it's like, what do we do about it anyway at this point? Because it is a big machine of a system. It is this big, but when I really think about it, like we can talk about whether it's worth it as far as what you get at the end, but we can also talk about is it even worth it as far as the knowledge you even get?
Right.
Like I'm not, I just feel like we talk about, 4 years. It's really not. It's
not.
Several weeks.
Well, that's what I was going to say. So this is a big piece that is just to me. Yeah. So in our community college option, the dual enrollment program to get the associate's degree, and this is not just, I'm pretty, well, I need to look at the college classes, but I'm pretty sure it's rolled into college courses, university as well. But like, for instance, in one semester, the classes that my son and my daughter are now signed up, my son's already taken, my daughter's doing, you can start a class in August and it's done in October. And that's a full credit.
Yeah.
I'm like, really? You got 8 weeks of something? I said, so this is, again, that whole idea. I mean, my kids have the option to participate or not. But this is what they want to do, and I'm going to support them. And it kind of goes back to the self-directed desire to know that they can, right? It's like, I see what's happening around me. I see what other people are doing, and I want to know if I can do this. And so more power to you. And I know you can, and I 100% believe you can. But I do, I don't know. Like I said, I've always been a questioner, and I've always been, why are you doing it that way? Or why is it being done that way? Or who's making the money? What? And so it's just been always a question. When we went to college, you took a class for a semester, 5 classes max in a semester, and that was it. And then you took another 5 classes. Now, some could argue, well, actually, you could condense these classes into 8 weeks if you're doing a hardcore study, but they're not doing a hardcore study. It's not like they're going to class every single day. It's still, on this date, you get your assignments and then it's due the following week. And then and so it's
Well,
all self-directed anyway.
I was just going to say that there's big gaps, even when we're saying it's this many weeks. It's not that many weeks of instruction.
Mm-mm.
It's,
Mm-mm.
You're buying these textbooks. Well, you can access that information and you can access more objective and up-to-date versions online than you can the textbook that they're selling you, no matter how many times they want to change the edition to charge you more money, right? There's all games. It's such a game. And I think that, you were talking about your oldest brother and just kind of going that construction path. And when I think about the people that I knew, growing up, and then even as an adult now, who have gone some of those routes, some of them are trade, some of them are, some of them have certification with their trades, and others just kind of came into trades without specific certifications. Many of those people are, a lot of them, if we're looking at, I don't personally look at success as money per se, but if that was if that was your goal, they're doing very well compared to a lot of the people, first of all, as you've mentioned, the debt that people end up in. And so you've got this debt you're fighting. But even if, let's say that you had scholarships or your parents were able to pay it all or whatever, even that aside, some of these trades are, and more power to them. Like it's,
and I think I just would love it to become a bit more on the honorable side, that people do want to work with their hands and they do want to help our society stay in business, if you will, because
and we don't have smart.
It takes a very specific brain to be able to do what people do in the trades, and it's not easy, and not everybody can do it. So I just would like to see more of an acceptance of the reality, which is that we need everybody. We need the scholars, we need the academics, we need the tradespeople, we need people who can use their hands, we need the creatives, we need the musicians. Like, we need everybody. So let's stop trying to push it. It's like we're trying to just water everything down. And I'm like, don't do that. Like, we need the vibrancy of the differences. And what is more vibrant than an individual who's doing what they want to do and they can provide for themselves and their family like they want to? That, to me, is vitality, not, drudge, got to do the job because I got the degree and I hate where I'm going and I wish I could do something different. Like, no, let's not do that.
Absolutely. And if people do, if they do decide not to do that kind of formal post-secondary route, and actually I want to make a point of saying that, this idea of like higher education.
Oh yes, I know you said that. Yeah, that's true.
Where we kind of get into this when we move away from that language to a more self-directed piece, right? And I want to say something about that. I just want to quickly clarify, as much as just people can make money in the trades, I just want to say flat out, people in the trades are smart. Like, I want to take that away, and I think they're not just smart necessarily in one way, because we have that too, where we say, oh, they're really so-and-so is mechanically smart, or so-and-so is, artistically smart, or whatever. You can be really good with your hands and be a welder or an auto mechanic and also be really smart in other areas too, right? Yeah. Not just about value. I just wanted to kind of clarify anything that I might have said there, but okay, now what was I? Now I've lost my other piece.
Just about the trades, and now it's not just about money, but also
about money.
Higher ed.
Higher ed. That's where I was going.
Yeah,
higher ed. So much of this, and you alluded it to the beginning, at the beginning of the conversation, Missy, is like, what's our situation too? Like, certain people have lifestyle aspirations that are higher than others, or certain people, like, not everybody does want to get married and support a family. Some people might want to travel and figure out kind of something interesting that allows them to do that. Some people have extended families that all live together and pool their resources. And so they don't need to think as, individually as other people. So I think too, there's like, we also have to, I think it's helpful to think about the different lifestyles that people choose to have. Like, for some people, they would love to live on their own, or they would love to have a roommate. And for the other people, they're like, no, not doing a roommate. I'm not here, I'm not. So taking into consideration all of those pieces. But to the point about different kinds of smart or whatever, most of my kids, who I would consider probably the most conventionally academic, who would have just really excelled in school and, kind of found that path really easy, is the one who has chosen the least amount of post-secondary education. And also super good with his hands, woodworking, like he's just kind of a well-rounded sort of a person. And he just said, I can't think of anything that I am interested in doing that I want to spend that much money and debt and time in. So he just kind of took it step by step. He got a full-time position in a store he thought he would like. They offered him management training. He took the opportunity. They offered him more. He took the opportunity, and it was great. He was meeting with people from other branches and other, communities, and he loved it. And he's moved up. He's now managing the department of a really big store, working with contractors, doing pretty important things, full benefits.
That's amazing.
At 22, right?
Yeah.
And the two that did the, wanted to go away and went to college, they're finding their feet, but they don't have benefits and and right. They're still figuring, and they might be figuring it out for a while. They're working, but it's like, I thought I liked this. I'm not sure. So I just want to say that too, that it's not, people make choices for different reasons. And I don't think that any of them have done anything wrong.
Right.
It's just the paths are different. And yeah.
And it's all a learning experience. So even if we have this knowledge that you and I have accumulated now, and we want to share with our kids, hey, these are the things that I've learned over the years, that this might not necessarily be the necessary track for you. I still am going to be like, but you got to do what you need to do. Yeah. You got to do you, because I don't want you to regret things, because you didn't do it the way you wanted to, or what was speaking to your heart. So I will provide information and insight, and I will be honest, but I'll also say that really ultimately, that has to come from you and your internal desire. Because it's like the degree-free program. I know we've talked about that before too, and how they have a huge following now because they're helping families reconsider what jobs look like and what career paths there are, and because I think what their research showed was like the majority of students in early high school only name like 7 or 8 different career paths, and they don't realize you can work in the hospital without being a doctor or a nurse. So there's 1,000 different ways to work in the hospital setting or to work in the medical setting. But anyway, all that to say, when we open up possibilities and stop putting timelines on everything, and I mean, if we live to be 80 years old, why do kids and young adults need to have it all figured out about 22 or 23? If they do, they still have the option to pivot, or if they are where they want to be because they didn't have to do all this other stuff that took their time away, then they just have a little bit longer time to really live within their happiness, their joy. And I know, like we were talking about the different types of students within the homeschooling community, and I do feel like maybe that's what we can work on, Aaron. I'll just put it out there. You can pull together all these stories and put together like some guide or whatever that people can hear all the different ways that it can shake out. But like I know kids, young adults who homeschooled who own businesses now, who have bought property, who own homes, and I'm just like, and they're like in their young 20s, and we hear all the time about how Gen Z is never going to own a house. And I'm like, well, why? Because I've seen quite a few people who are doing that. I think it really boils down to location and how you've spent your early years, and have you been saving money, and have you learned about compound interest?
Yes. And if I can add that, yes. And to add something to that, do we as parents need to be kicking our kids out at 18 or 19, or does it make more sense to allow them to save some money?
Yes.
So, right. Like, and maybe that doesn't make sense for everybody.
Yep.
but that's something that I definitely think, we are in kind of a weird time right now.
Mm-hmm. We are.
There's lots of stuff going on, and there's some really difficult stuff, and there's some opportunity, and it's a time of great flux, I think, right now. And those same rules that we rules, maybe they were just cultural rules, but that we played by, that, this is, you get out of the house, you go away to school, you do this, you do that. Maybe a lot of it doesn't make sense right now. And so just kind of taking a breath and figuring out that alongside our families and our kids, rather than just making, an assumption. I wanted to, and I want to be like aware of your time and stuff too, Missy. So in my brain, I have 3 more things I want to say, and then whatever you want to say. But I wanted to talk about something that my daughter is doing, which I think is a little different from what I've seen or heard. And for her, I think this is pretty personality dependent. And I may have talked about it. We had a conversation on your podcast, so I might have already talked about this there. So she is working quite a few hours a week, like, I don't know, maybe 25, 30 hours a week. And then also pursuing art study, almost full time. She's pretty busy right now, almost full time. But that art study she has put that together herself. So she is somebody who likes the conventional, like I keep saying to her, you could do some greeting cards with this, or she's really wanting to get into children's, like writing and illustrating, right? But you could do some of that now. You could self-publish. But it's funny. She's like, no, my art isn't where I want it to be for that. So she is really wanting to do that conventional. She has a certain number of courses she's working through, a certain number of hours set aside. She's got a spreadsheet all with it all there, complete, in progress. Like, she's very systematic, but it's a self-directed course of study. So she really has developed her own program. She's researched all kinds of stuff. She's doing various courses, and has really given herself. I mean, she's been doing everything from art history to digital art to, she's taken art business courses on like surface design, because she said, art is not just about doing these huge paintings and seeing if you can sell it. It's like patterns and having that on fabric or any number of things. So she's really giving herself this well-rounded, but she's not stressed about whether she, quote, makes it as an artist, because she actually also really loves her job. Yeah. She loves it. I keep saying to her, are you tired, working all these hours? She goes, no, I love it there. And so she's also a person that has a pretty humble, she doesn't need the thing. Like, I have one son, he's got big plans for himself, even materially, right? So she's not like, she's just much more. So for her, it's like, I just want to be responsibly able to take care of myself and pursue something I love. And if the thing I love is not the thing that makes me the most money, that's okay. I'm happy to work hard in more of an entry-level position and see where that goes as well. So I just want to say that there's lots of people, especially I think artistic and creative people, whether it's music or sometimes they partner stuff, and they're, if they can do a job that they don't have to bring home with them, so to speak, it gives them that space to create when they get. So it's not all about how much money you can make or whether you have that. So
and it just goes back to looking at the kid in front of you.
Absolutely.
Even within the same family, you've got all these variations and what your young adults want to pursue, and it's not like one is better than the other, because if you compare yourself to each other, you're never going to stop comparing. So compare yourself where you were yesterday and also where you want to go. So that's
exactly
the best way to go about it. That's much more clarifying than trying to keep up with everybody else that's doing something that, doesn't really appeal to you. But I do just listening to you talk and tell the stories and reflect on your own children. It just made me realize that really in this teenage years to the young adult years is probably some of the most critically self-aware times in children's lives, in our lives, where we are hyper focused on what everybody else is doing and how are we matching up and how are we fitting in or how are we not. And I think that's just natural development, and that we're in that young adult years, you are like, just your mind is so open to everything. And then of course social media just throws gasoline on that fire, because then you can see what everybody's doing. So I do think when we're able to pull our kids somewhat out of that world where everybody's spinning around them doing different things, it allows them to get more true to themselves and more quiet about the noise that's out there of what you should or shouldn't be doing. Yeah. And then you can create a plan that matches where you want to go better than doing it just because, just because. No, because why? Because what? Because where? Like, have an answer. If you don't have a clear answer, then maybe this isn't really what you want to do.
Agreed. Well, and it kind of makes me think about how, I would pull some of my own projections back, try to keep my voice quiet at times. So my son that's kind of now been applying for these and now has a management position. When he first started there, a lot of the kids his age, well, kids, they were 19 maybe, they were there part-time and going to school. And so in my mind, I was wondering if he was going to feel less than, or, I kept myself, but I was kind of wondering that. And, yeah, there's something about having that opportunity to really know yourself and feel good about yourself and know that your family values you regardless of how far you do. Yeah. That I think really lets you kind of stay the course versus pulling out of stuff because it might, how does this look? Or, that comparison trap that people get into. So yeah, he's just really stayed the course, and he felt, I don't think it was bothering him at all. And in fact, now he's actually managing some of those people. And so of course my conventional brain goes, oh, how's that? How do they feel about that? And he's like, oh, like it's, we attach so much stuff to things based on our belief system of this hierarchy. Right. But they're probably fine with that because they're pursuing what they want to do. And it's like, but it was just so interesting for me to like pull back some of my own assumptions about that stuff. Yep. Yeah. And anyway, I also just, the one of the other things I wanted to say was that I think a lot of this, going away to college and having this college experience, a lot of it is not even just academics for people, for families even. It's this idea that you go to find yourself. That somehow, like I've even heard people here say that about being disappointed that their child chose a local university. Because they felt they needed the experience. I mean, financially, I'm sure it was good, but they needed the experience of, kind of being out there at a college dorm, or here we call them residences, but being out at a college dorm and like having that, being out and exploring new ideas. And I just, I think part of the beauty of having this more individualized education leading up to that is our kids can be dipping into that stuff, this kind of higher learning, like my guy that didn't go the college route has spent so much time listening to the most interesting podcasts. Financial literacy, so much spirituality, and like he really digs into that stuff, financial stuff, theological stuff, philosophical stuff. It doesn't match at all what he does at his job, but that doesn't matter. He's still learning all these things, and he has such a huge group of friends that he's met, and he's quite an introverted guy, so it's interesting. A huge group of friends that he's met, so he's still having, he's goes to the cottage for the weekend with somebody else's cottage, for 5 or 6 or with 5 or 6 guys for a weekend, or he fun to the college town and they go out and do the pubs. Like, you don't have to do all of the things to have those experiences of going out to the pubs or going away for a weekend or traveling or whatever.
My son's on a trip right now with all his guy friends in Florida, and they left. They're 5 days gone. They rented a house and they go have a blast together. And then he's going somewhere else. So, traveling whenever he can. And he's able to afford it because he's worked and he's saved his money. And I just find that the value of money, the value of the dollar becomes much more real when you're earning your own money and you're able to spend it in the way you want to.
Yes.
And I just feel like when our students and our children are able to do that on the earlier side, I think it just sets a respect for finances earlier. And I think maybe we've talked about this before, but when it comes to the saving thing, my son got into he was curious about real estate and wondered about that. And then he got curious about saving and 401s and things like that. So yeah, he started a Roth IRA at, I think he was 18 when he could. And I'm like, wow, he is a million miles ahead of me at that age.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, this is insane. So back to the whole, still living at home, some people might have the theory of, well, if your kids are still living under your roof, then you are somehow preventing them from fully maturing because they're still living under the roof of mom and dad. But I think that really boils down to what kind of relationship you have. Now, if you live under the parents' roof and they're kind of in control and controlling and oppressive of you, then yeah, that's a problem. But if you live under the same roof and you have freedom to do and be respectful of one another like you would in any relationship, then I think that that's completely sensible from a relationship perspective, but a financial one. And I was like, maybe I can't just hand my kids a ton of money and send them on their merry way, but this is how we can help encourage generational wealth by not spending an excessive amount of money on $1,000 or $2,000 apartment. Take that money and put it back in your Roth IRA and just keep letting it grow. And then 10 years down the line, all that money you could have been spending on an apartment has been saved. So that's the way I look at it from the financial side.
Yes.
So I'm hoping, one day that'll really balloon into something that he'll be very proud of. And I think he will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I love that. And we have very similar thought processes here, Missy, too. And I'm finding for my two youngest, who have stayed at home and worked, and as my daughter's doing her own study as well, but paying for that. She pays for home, and I'm happy to help pay for it, but she has them before I even, there's just that level of independence that's really different, right? So I had said the other day, where are you at? And she's, oh no, I've already purchased those. I just haven't started them yet. So,
oh my gosh, yeah.
So not even, you're not even, it's a totally different conversation. But absolutely. And I think that the other thing I just kind of wanted to put in there for people that are, I guess, home educating is we spend so much time thinking about this one child or multiple children. But I mean, if we're thinking child by child, this one child and what's, how am I going to not fail this child to make sure that they have these opportunities? And that's all we can do because we only know this one child. But the thing that I'm finding too, 3 out of 4 of my kids are now connecting with significant others in some way or another in serious relationships. And that changes the game again, because you're balancing location, you're balancing what are they doing educationally, or what are they doing job wise, or, what are their aspirations? And so I guess I'll just say it again, this ability to just kind of take a deep breath and be open, because now it's you're not just, as your kids get older, you have to kind of go, oh, okay. Oh, okay. I wouldn't have thought of that, but okay. Well, now you're doing that for partners as well. Right? And so I just think it serves us well to kind of, I don't know, just have this openness. I'm even finding it as my parents are aging. This mindset helps me. I don't, it's not, okay, you're this age, so you should be doing this and you should be looking into this. It's okay, what is the individual situation? Mm-hmm. What does it seem like? And do we need to rush into moving out of your house to, I don't know, maybe you want to, maybe you don't. But it's funny, I'm starting to have these similar conversations at the other end of the age spectrum. Yeah. But and we've talked about that too, Missy, actually.
Right, I know how unschooling prepared me for midlife.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. But it's interesting. It just really is a lifespan. I don't know. I just think those tools really, really help us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep. I think just being open and honest with yourself about what you need and want. And then as a parent, trying to be stay curious and recognize that you don't have all the answers and you have no idea what the future can be or will look like exactly for your kids. All we can do really is put the next stepping stone down or provide an opportunity or say, I'll be here to help you put the next stepping stone down. It's a partnership. And I mean, because if we did know, if as parents, just because you're a parent, know what to do, then we wouldn't have any trouble. Like nobody would ever be failing at anything. It's just impossible. We have no idea what life circumstances are going to be around the corner. So and this is not something that I came into easily. I fought the whole idea of trying to project the future. I thought if I just did this, this, and this, then this and this will happen. But, you get humbled by life. You do. And you recognize that all we really can do is the best we can with what we have, and then pivot. That's my favorite word, pivot.
And be expecting to pivot.
Yes.
Right. I think that's it for me too. Just sort of being, you have some ideas in mind and some plans for those ideas, but also you leave a lot of space to just,
You got to be able to move. Yeah. You got to be able to flex, because if you're not, you'll just get run over. Life will take you down.
Yeah. Right.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. Well, on that note, I think I might have come to the end of all those points that I had. Is there anything else that comes to mind?
No, I think we touched on pretty much everything. I really I hope this conversation gives people things to think about and to consider, and even, allows them to relax into their lives a little bit more. That the time frame and the timeline can be self-induced pain. That we can just realize that the timeline is a little bit wider and bigger. And if you find yourself in comparison mode, just go touch grass, like get outside, go take a walk, and also ask why am I in comparison mode? What is this fear? What is this nervousness and anxiety? Just ask it why it's there. What did it tell me? Did I miss something? Am I forgetting something? So just have a conversation about why you're feeling the stress and the worry. And sometimes the reality is maybe you did not live up to your own value system or your expectations. And that's okay too. But be honest with yourself about that, and then figure out a way to navigate it and with your kids. So as I think I shared something a while back about guilt is it's a messenger. It's not, don't feel guilty. It's like, well, wait, am I feeling guilty? And if so, why? Where did that come from? So it's, again, just curiosity always about everything. And then.
No, I love that, because there are things that happen that are tricky and regretful. It's not, because I think sometimes homeschooling, and maybe particularly unschooling, there can be a sense of like, just everything, it never matters. Everything will be fine. And I appreciate that.
Right.
Everybody's circumstances are different, right? Like even this conversation we're having right now, whether kids kind of find let's say a job that can sustain them or whatever, those stakes are higher for some kids than they are for others, because families are in different positions.
Absolutely.
So, I love that you kind of added that about just kind of staying curious, because I think, we're not just sort of saying, it's always perfect. It's really not.
And you do have to put some skin in the game. Like you can't just be like, it'll be fine. No, I mean, you have to take action. You have to be logical. And you do need to make a plan, but the plan doesn't have to be 20 years in advance. I think that's
it. And I think it's just being open to, if there are areas that you feel like, wow, we could have done that differently, or that ended up being a lot of money that feels like it didn't make sense for this degree or whatever. I mean, at that point, it is what it is. So exactly. It's just kind of not getting stuck in these preconceived ideas, I think, of failure and success.
Right. It's like the tuition to life.
Right. And back to your original point, this coming through high school, being told that being insinuated anyway that there's this one path, and how do we just broaden our thinking and get thinking critically about that and individually about it.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
Yeah. Thank you, Missy.
Thank you so much, Erin. Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, it's funny. I was just going to say I'll link your article, but I don't really know what format, because this isn't really, it's not the podcast, but we'll figure something out.
Yeah.
But again, it's it was your Substack, making the high school diploma mean something again. And yeah, I'll figure out a way to link it somewhere. So
okay. Thank you.
Okay.